You're listening to This is Ibrox, your Rangers podcast, brought to you by Triple H Mortgages, the one-stop shop for all your mortgage and mortgage insurance needs. Contact them on 01453 887179 or via email hello@hhhmortgages.com.
This is Ibrox.
Run away tonight, leave the city, we'll be fine. Blowing up like dynamite, I never meant to make you cry. Make your mind up.
Hello and welcome to your new weekly edition of This is Ibrox, your Rangers podcast, the podcast of the champions. My name's Scott Paterson, I'm your host for this week as per usual, and we're joined by fellow podders. Tommy McIntyre joins us this week. Hi Tommy, how you doing?
Evening Scott, evening Jeds.
Robbie Halliday joins us as well. Hi Robbie, you're back again. We've invited you back on for a second week. You were good last week.
Good debut, mate. Pleasure to be back.
We should say as well, as a special guest for our pod this week, we're joined by the freelance journalist working for Sky News, Sky Sports News, Sky News, and indeed also contributing to the Matchday programme. Andrew Dickson joins us this week. Hi Andrew.
Good evening. No pressure. I need to be good this week if Robbie was good last week.
Listen, you're absolutely right. It's a good pod. We've got a good group of guys here. Definite sevens.
I'm not entirely convinced of that. I thought Robbie coming back is more of a kind of a sign of
token gesture.
Not at all. Don't you believe it? Don't you believe it?
I was going to say it was good of Scott to bring his wee bra on the night, so
that's why Robbie's back.
You went down to a 6 already. This is Ibrox, the Rangers podcast, is brought to you by Triple H Mortgages, the one-stop shop for your mortgage and mortgage insurance needs. Contact them as early as you can on 01453 887179 or via their email hello@hhhmortgages.com. Available on the World Wide Web at triplehmortgages.com and the same address on Facebook, triplehmortgages.com. If you are to speak to them and you're looking for some advice, by all means mention my name, Scott Patterson, Robbie, Tommy or Willie, who is occasionally on the pod as well. In general, just mention This is Ibrox and the guys there will look after you very well indeed. This week on the pod, we cover all the good things you'd expect. The last sort of 5 games of the season have been announced earlier today. We speak about the Celtic game from the weekend. We speak about some of the things that we don't like to speak about, to be perfectly honest with you, in the pods. We'll cover it tonight. And Tommy, first of all, we'll go back to the game last Thursday, the second leg, Slavia Prague at Ibrox. The contest itself, I think it's safe to say the better team won the tie in the night.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I thought Slavia were pretty front foot over both legs, thoroughly deserving of it. I thought really changed it up. Rangers struggled at the back, struggled in the middle, by and large struggled up front as well. Maybe a 45 minutes out in the Czech Republic was pretty decent. Beyond that, there was nothing really holding Slavia back. I think the best team went through on the tie, but unfortunately that's not the story about the Slavia game. And we'll touch on the other things in a little while, but concentrating on football, because primarily a football podcast, without going into too much of the depth and detail, Rangers never got to grips with Slavia Prague, and people maybe from the outside looked at that tie and thought ultimately winnable. And by and large, I think they were two very close teams, and Slavia just set up better, dominated the possession better, got the press better across both legs as well. Ultimately unsettled Rangers. Rangers were never able to really get in a rhythm, apart from that second 45 that I've already alluded to. And so Slavia were able to dictate it by and large. Getting an relatively early goal at Ibrox really set the tempo. And yeah, we had some half chances, but we never really seemed like we were going to me anyway, that we were getting ourselves into the driving seat. We never won the battle. And, Slavia showed that as you progress further in these tournaments and you get deeper, the capacity for mistake making and getting out of danger lessens considerably. They took their chances, we didn't, and again, not to duplicate it, the best team won on the night and the best team won overall.
Robbie, I felt we looked a little bit stuffy, I think is maybe the term, particularly for the first 45. I didn't think we looked a wee bit leggy, if you like. Conceded a goal from, again, a cross coming over from that right-hand side, and it's a clever header, I think, really in at the near post. You could argue Al McGregor may have done better.
Yeah, I think, as you say, we started a wee bit poor, which has been, I think we spoke about it a wee bit last week. It's been a common theme in quite a few European sides, but the only difference this time is we didn't really recover as well as we normally do. I think another sort of common theme don't want to start in a negative tone talk about the team because it was still a brilliant campaign overall. But there does seem a wee bit of a theme that cross ball down the wide areas has kind of been a Achilles heel a wee bit. I think back to, there was the Hamilton game away. Celtic at the weekend there came for a ball down the side of cross ball. I think Motherwell at Ibrox was a low cross into the box as well. Antwerp as well. And actually I think in both legs against Standard Liège, the home leg against Standard Liège was the same. So it was a wee bit disappointing that we kind of get the early warning signs in the first leg of where they were going to try and exploit us. As I say, we spoke about it a wee bit last week. They were trying the early switch to try and overload us on that side and get crossed into the box. So to lose a first goal, that was a wee bit disappointing, but I think a couple of people spoke about Golson for that goal. I don't actually think that he could have done much about it. I think they had a sort of third man runner behind him, which kind of forced him to get a yard back, and then the guy got a kind of free header at the front post. And I agree with you, I thought McGregor probably could have done a wee bit better, but I say the difference between that and other European ties is we recovered a lot better than in those other games, whereas if you think of Gerrard's last 3 campaigns in Europe, there's probably not been 2 games in a row where we've created as little chances as we have done over these 2 ties. So I think, again, I don't want to speak negatively about it because it's probably the only ties that we've, if you even want to call it, let ourselves down that we have done, because up till now we have admittedly punched above our weight. I think one thing you've always put in our favour is even when we've not played well, we've looked like we'll create a goal, we're not good to set pieces, but I think if I've been totally honest, as Tommy said, the best team won over the 2 ties, so I don't think we have much complaints that way. And overall, it was still a very positive campaign.
Andrew, again, welcome to the podcast. I think one thing that surprised me when the team lineups were announced last Thursday night was perhaps the inclusion of Leon Balogun ahead of Philip Hallander.
Yeah, I mean, it surprised me as well. I was actually working on another match just before, like literally until about 10 minutes before the game kicked off. And I wasn't aware that the manager had said in his pre-match chat that actually Hallander had a bit of a knock. So that obviously went some way to explaining it. But I think we've seen with Balogun, decent enough player, picked up in a free last summer. But there's probably a reason that he's come to Rangers from Wigan Athletic. He has shown up well in some matches. I think it was the Dundee United game recently where he played right back and had a fairly solid game. Very well, and got quite a lot of praise for it, and rightly so. But then you look at him and you're playing against Slavia Prague, who a lot of Rangers fans expected to get past Slavia, and I think that's probably a mark of the progress that's been made this season, that you're playing against a team who reached the quarters 2 seasons ago as well, and clearly are pretty well versed in how to make an impact at that level. But Rangers fans, I think rightly, were probably quite confident going into that one. But if you're coming up against a team like Slavia and against Celtic at the weekend as well, I mean, we saw Balogun come off 10-15 minutes into the second half for Nathan Paterson. So yeah, I mean, it was a surprise. I think it really highlighted that that's one area of the squad that the manager probably has to look at a little bit more in the summer. Obviously, we'll wait and see what happens with regards to whether people might move on or whatever. I think at the moment, as the squad stands just now, cover in that kind of area, granted, you're going to have Tavernier back, and Paterson is already developing into a very capable deputy. It's going to be quite rare that Balogun is going to be asked to play right back, so I think you have to keep that in mind as well. And Balogun, to be fair, at times in the central area has done well too, but it's an area at the moment you just don't know exactly what's going to happen with Katic, because he's been out for so long, and Edmondson, obviously, what happened with him and being put out to Derby on loan, and he's playing in a Derby team that at the moment is nosediving down that table again in the Championship. So there are defensive options there, and Balogun is one of them, but I think it's an area that the manager is probably going to have to work on a little bit in the summer, and I think we saw that the Balogun was just a little bit not quite what he needed to be in that game, and it was very clear that Slavia straight away targeted him, and Celtic tried to do the same thing, of course, yesterday as well. So if you've got a weak link, you're obviously going to try to target them, and that's very much what happened. So and to echo what the guy said, the better team won. There's no doubt about it. I know we're going to come on to talk about the racism or alleged racism incident in a minute, and one idea has been that maybe Slavia should be thrown out of the competition for this if it can be proven, which in all honesty I think is going to be quite difficult to prove. But if you ever got to that point where you could prove it and they should be eliminated, fine. But I don't think Rangers should be reinstated, because
Absolutely.
Rangers were second best over both legs. I mean, even in the first leg where they drew 1 each, they were quite fortunate to get that combination of chances that were missed, and then the incredible save from Alan McGregor in stoppage time also. I don't think there's any question that Rangers should be reinstated back into the competition if anything were to happen with that. But I mean, Slavia were a good team, and you know, they'll pose problems for Arsenal in the quarterfinals, because. Yeah. I, in all honesty, if I wanted Rangers to go into the quarterfinals and have the prospect of coming up against an English team, keeping in mind that Tottenham were still in the last 16 as well, if you took them as potential quarterfinal opponents, I would have said Tottenham, Man United and Arsenal. Arsenal are the ones that I would have wanted to play. So I think Slavia will really fancy their chances. They've already gone to England and knocked out Leicester. They've come up to Glasgow and knocked Rangers out. So they'll go there fully expecting they can do it again, and I think rightly so that they're probably a decent outside bet for the tournament, because I think once you look at the couple of English teams that are still involved, and Arsenal obviously being one of them, beyond that, it wouldn't worry me too much, and I think Slavia genuinely could go a fair bit further in the competition. Rangers were knocked out by a good team. You know, it's only 6 defeats as well that Steven Gerrard's had as a manager in Europe with the club in 45 games. That's an incredible record. I don't think there's any shame in going out to Slavia, but undoubtedly Rangers deserve to go out.
Just, if you don't let me jump in, your point on it, obviously you're saying it's only a 6 defeat in Europe, so one thing that I don't think many can do is criticise any decision that Steven Gerrard's made in Europe. However, just going back to the point on Hollander being dropped, it surprised me massively, to be honest. I'd actually spoke to ourselves before the game, and I know I was talking about it with mates in a group chat, and they said that apparently, as you just said there, Andrew, that Gerrard had mentioned that Hollander picked up a knock. But I don't know about you guys, but see, when that gets said, but he's on the bench, that just kind of raises questions for me, because who's to say that if we get an injury after 5 minutes that he wouldn't have to have played 85? And then I thought, right, maybe he's just on the bench regardless, and if there's an injury, then Jack Simpson would have came on. However, when I then seen Hollander start 3 days later, I just thought it was a bit strange. So if I was to call it basically on the fact that one guy was on the bench and Balogun started, I was surprised, because I know people make the argument about Balogun's pace, but for me, Hollander's arguably been our best European performer this season. And as much as he kind of does have this lack of pace, I've very rarely seen him get beaten for pace.
Yeah.
Because he seems to read the game very well. So on paper, I thought this decision could have made sense, but on the evidence of what we've seen throughout the last season or two, I found that a strange one to see he wasn't starting.
Yeah, just on that, because I think I made a very similar point last week about the fact that Hollander's positioning and his football intelligence is significantly better than Leon Balogun's, and it's probably really important that we don't point to the reason Rangers got beaten at home by Slavia Prague was Leon Balogun. He had a pretty poor game, but it wasn't his own fault.
No.
By and large, across the pitch, the Slavia players individually and collectively dominated and put their game plan on top of Rangers' game plan and were able to dictate the play. But Leon Balogun uses that pace as a get out, and sometimes that can mask a whole lot of problems when it comes to your positioning in the game and your reading of the game. And that can sometimes get swept up if you're operating in a central 2 or a central 3. When you're actually operating out on the fringes, much as Leon Balogun was in the front game as well, in the fullback position, the propensity to get exposed is a lot clearer. And then you have the domino effect, so much like the Slavia game and the Celtic game by extension, Glasgow Derby, Italics, Old Firm game. It starts to concertina or domino effect down, because, for example, in the Old Firm game, what you do is you get your central defender having to push across, and Goldson was doing that, trying to second guess Balogun getting caught out, and therefore you open up gaps in the middle, which makes your next centre back start to question himself. So whilst it wasn't Balogun's fault, and I agree with Andrew, no Rangers fans should be looking at any of the other racism storm around about that game and thinking, Rangers, backdoor entry if they get kicked out. It's not about that. It's much bigger. And quite frankly, the Rangers don't deserve to be in the next round because we're beaten by a better team. But when you're looking at Balogun, you have to fully understand that what we were seeing there is quite naturally a guy who once upon a time, every now and again, has played fullback position, but he is not a fullback. It was quite clearly exposed, and it is something we do need to look at in the pre-season, because there's lots of decisions made there. Even Tavernier picking up the Championship, I think he's in his last year of his contract. He's getting on. There's a succession plan there with Nathan and Paterson, but also, do you cash in? Every club is a selling club. I'm sick and tired of saying that, and it holds true for Rangers as well. But yeah, Balogun had a poor game, and he unsettled for that decision. As forced on as it was, unsettled the entire defence. If you unsettle your bedrock, you start to unsettle the midfielders who don't know whether to drop back or not, and all of a sudden your game plan starts to shift about. I think that absolutely contributed to the fact that Slavia were able to dominate, and we were continually on the back foot.
Yeah, because I don't want to turn this into a Balogun bashing or anything, but one thing I think was quite prominent as well is it showed the importance of having a left centre half playing on the left, because I thought we struggled to play out for that side as well. And the sort of biggest example, if you want to watch the game back, is it was the one where he nearly gave the penalty away, which for me was a penalty. I think it was just the end of the first half. But he's on his left side, and I think by this point, Slavia have now recognised that he's a right footer playing on the left. So they've kind of ushered him down that side, and I think their wing back or wingers, whatever it was at the time, was very close to Barisic. So the natural thing for a left-sided centre-half would be to kind of whip the ball into Striker's feet, but because he seemed pretty unsure of doing that, he's had to turn back to play it back to the goalie, and he showed the full ground what he's going to do, and then the guy read it and he's full on goal, and for me, it was a penalty. Whereas if you've got a left footer doing that, or somebody even a bit more comfortable on the left side, then that's not happening. So I think it showed the importance as well. Obviously, for years you've seen two right-sided players playing at the back, but I think as well it showed the importance. If you want to play out for the back like we do, having a left and right footer makes a big difference.
Yeah, as a smaller side, actually, just away from Leon Balogun, right? Let's give the guy a.
I know, I feel bad. He's actually been a great signing.
But through everything that happened towards the end of the game, and no point in alluding to it, the racism storm at the end of the game, and then carried on in terms of statements, counter statements, and all that type of thing. It's very unfortunate, because given the lack of, and I understand individual player circumstances, but given the lack of forward-facing support for Glen Kamara, etc., or the collegiate cabinet responsibility position that the Slavia team have taken, it's a shame, because it taints all those players, and there are several members of that Slavia team that I would have absolutely taken in Rangers jerseys. Yeah. Guys like Provod and stuff like that as well were absolutely fantastic, and being in the Czech league, reasonable kind of values and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I think that ship might very well have sailed.
Tommy, earlier on in the campaign, Kemar Roofe gave us that moment in Belgium, a real gasp moment, you have to say. But he done it again on Thursday there for all the wrong reasons. His career has almost instantly became really start-stop over the last little while, hasn't it?
The injuries haven't helped with that, and we knew he came with a bit of a injury baggage. He has to be handled appropriately. That's fine. We don't want to put him into he's not in the bucket at the moment or the waste bin.
No.
What we knew we were getting, there's obviously talent in there, real genuine talent. I think we spoke at the time of that breathtaking goal. It's not just the fact that you do it and you have the technique to do it. It's having the confidence in your own ability to take it on in the first place. There's several component parts to that make a top athlete, I suppose. But yeah, his challenge on the night is really, really poor, and spoke to that rustiness. I think he's mentally very rusty there, because he gets the decision making all wrong. The bounce is mistimed for the ball, his going towards it. The leap is really, he's not anywhere near the ball, and I don't think in any way, shape or form, and nobody is saying that it was malicious, right? Apart from maybe the fringes of the internet or something like that. But I don't think it's malicious. He's not, I don't know, finally getting round to outfield players taking revenge on the ghost of Schumacher, right? That's one for the older fans there of different football genres. But he just completely mistimes it, and I think that speaks to a player who is really, really not up to speed. You can do all the fitness training that you want, but we talk about mass sharpness. Mass sharpness is also reading the ball, reading the flight of it, understanding when to enact your position, your biomechanics, in order to get to the ball. And yeah, it has really been a stop-start scenario for Kemar Roofe. There is talent in there. How often we get to see that talent is probably the question. And once you start to get into that question, by extension, because succession planning and recruitment and acumen is always in that conversation, you start to say, how much can I rely on this guy?
Yeah.
And if I wanted to rely on him, I'm not seeing it. I look to Defoe, who's, I don't know, might not very well be here come the end of the season. Then you look at Morelos, who might not be here come the end of the season, things permitting. Cedric Itten as a project, and I might as well use that cliched football term right off the bat, right? People throw the word project out when they don't quite mean project, right? But okay, I'll do it as well. He's a project. Okay, you're maybe looking at the fact you need to bring somebody else in if you can't rely on Kemar Roofe. And that's a slightly different conversation. I think he still has the backing and the goodwill of the support. But you can't live on one breathtaking moment in Belgium. And I know he's scored other goals and he's a very talented player. I've spoke about that intelligence. I'm not going to duplicate. But unless you can consistently be on the pitch, then you don't have a place at Ibrox, and we really need to see the best of Kemar Roofe, and hopefully he gets a good rest in pre-season. No need to rush him back. The title's won. We're out of Europe. We'll get a Scottish Cup. Let's slowly bed him back in, and we hope to see the fruits of Kemar Roofe come, season 21-22, when we are looking to players of that talent to play in the Champions League, hopefully.
I think with Roofe, he's probably quite symbolic of the kind of player that Rangers look to get, because you're either trying to unearth somebody like a Morelos who is playing in Finland and is 19, 20 years old when he comes to Rangers, and you get a little bit lucky with it, or you go to the other end and Kemar Roofe clearly has the ability to be able to play in the English Premier League. There's no doubt about that. He was a big success when he was at Leeds most recently, before going over to Anderlecht. Very, very good player, but like you say, there's that little element with him where he's injury prone and he's a bit rusty at times, and we saw it in the first part of the season, where when he did get a run of matches, I think he scored 10 in 10 games at one point, which was a great run, and I think the standard game fell within that sequence. But that's almost, as much as Rangers have made excellent progress again this season, year on year under Steven Gerrard, the progress and the development of the squad has been clear, and that's certainly the case again this season. But Rangers' place within the market is still not where Rangers fans would like their place to be within the market. So you still have to accept that you're either going to get a little bit lucky with bringing in a younger player. You're not going to bring in somebody 25, 26, 27 who's going to be the finished article. There's going to be something maybe a little bit lacking that stops them from playing at the higher level, but is good enough to play in the Scottish Premiership and to do a job for the club in Europe. And Kemar Roofe probably falls into that category. He's a terrific player. The challenge, honestly, was, I think, the worst challenge I've ever seen on a football pitch. It was awful. I was... not totally surprised, but even still a little bit astounded by the fact that on social media, talking to one or two people, there were still people there saying it's not a red card. I mean, it was a red card. Let's just stop the call.
I wish I could be that biased, but I just can't.
Honestly, I mean, I get that people want to support their team. People can't see past their team. That's fine. But that was a red card. There were. I was looking at one of the picture agencies, Getty Images. I was looking at their pictures, and they actually had a lot of different photographs of the incident from probably at least half a dozen different angles, and there's not a single one of them that looked like, do you know what, he's been a bit unlucky there. He's gone in studs first and absolutely planted them into the guy's face, and you saw the face afterwards. I mean, what a mess it was. That's the kind of thing where you hope it heals up quite well, but he's probably going to have some scarring on his face. I mean, it's literally it's awful.
He's also very lucky that he's not got to your point there, Andrew, he's very, very lucky, the goalkeeper. And I'm with you, right? So it's a red card all day long. If you're listening to this or watching this and you've got the blue tinted specs on, take them off, right? Our players can make mistakes as well, and it's a horror challenge, right? Just not intent, I suppose, is the important point. But to the goalkeeper, who we all hope recovers, he's very lucky he didn't get a stud in the eye.
In the eye.
Because if that carries through, that guy's got permanent sight damage. You're going to rip. You're going to damage a lot of the front level optics and the residual optics as well. But yeah, to that point, I think anybody trying to defend that challenge I think the only good angle of it was when he was past the goalkeeper in a way, and you couldn't see the state of the goalkeeper. But yeah, we wish him all the very best. Nobody wants to see that type of challenge or anybody injured to that extent. Really, really unfortunate. But it does speak to a wider narrative there, just to Andrew's point, not to wax too lyrical, but to get a bookend on it. in terms of that, Rangers are never, in the current climate, and by current I mean as far as I can see down the road, Rangers are never going to get top tier talent, right? Scotland is not going to generate top tier talent unless you get a diamond in the rough, and even then it's not the full article you're developing, right? We're going to buy top tier talent because they go to other richer leagues, right? What we're going to get is iteratively better players. And so to that point that Andrew's making, we went through 3 stages of the iteration of the Steven Gerrard era. It's culminated in a really good title win, a really important title win. If you can then generate into the group stages next season and win the title, because the season after that is the guaranteed automatic entry to the group stages because of the coefficient, which Rangers are driven, obviously, then you can start to see an absolute iterative uptick in the level of quality that you can buy, which is already pre-polished. Rangers just need to alloy that with still doing the basics of developing their own and taking some of those punts that Andrew's talking about, your Morelos type player, to say we can bring them in and we can develop them up. But getting over this first title and actually winning a couple of more immediately to be able to access that Champions League part is the big thing, because it's a big financial difference between the good positive noises of saying last 16 UEL versus the balance sheet being able to see that you've got yourself into the CL.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important for the business model, full stop. So if we want to continue and be progressively more successful, you need that CL money in the bank. So that's the important point of that.
Robbie, halfway through the second half, Balogun gets his second yellow and his red, so he goes off. We're down to 9 men. And I have to say that the best player over the 2 legs, the boy Stanchow, curls an absolutely wonderful free kick beyond Alan McGregor. He is definitely someone I think to keep your eye on as the years trundle by, because he won't be playing his football in Czechoslovakia for long, I don't think.
I don't know if any looked out, but I think, did they not score at the weekend as well?
I think he did. I think he did score at the weekend, yeah.
I think they won 4-0 and he scored at the weekend. But as Tommy said, there was a few of them I thought that were really good, and he was certainly one of them, because he was obviously the boy who scored in the first leg, and he also had the chance where he kind of started to curl it down goals and again picked some of that was him as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. There was a few that were really good. But the free kick was brilliant. Like, I know that I think I seen him talking in an interview saying that the guy, his teammate who was lining up next to him, says, "Oh, I hit the goalkeeper's side." But he said, "Oh, after looking at the goalkeeper's position, I thought it was on for me to curl it at the near post." And I've seen a few people question McGregor's positioning, and he probably could have. It seemed like not only like far over to his left-hand post, but also 2-3 yards off his line. So you probably could have pointed fingers at it and say that maybe anticipating he's going to cross it because I've been a bit closer. But see, in all honesty, see if he was positioned better, if you want to call it that, I still don't think he's saving it, because it's dipped that much. It's whipped into the corner with a lot of pace. So I don't even think, if he'd moved a yard to the other side, I'm still not too sure he'd have saved it, because I probably dipped over the top of him. But it was a great goal. And again, I'm talking about teams that goals we've conceded. I maybe contradict myself a wee bit because I'm seeing cross balls, but in Europe, a lot of the goals we've faced have been top quality goals, which I suppose you're going to take. I can't even think off the top of my head domestically many goals we've conceded through individual errors. So that goal added to that team anyway, because it's probably one of the best, if not the best, we've faced this season.
Andrew, we can't speak about the game last Thursday night without covering the Glen Kamara incident, of course. Glen Kamara didn't really say anything about it at the time until the statement came out on Friday night. However, Connor Goldson was quite vociferous in his actions when he went looking for Kudela. And Sky Sport News put out a really good piece with Connor Goldson on the Friday when he done the Old Firm presser. Let us know a little bit about that. I know you and your colleagues were involved in that directly, so let us know what the feeling was around that interview.
Yeah, I mean, so I was working at Sky Sports News on Friday on one of the late teams. So so we were responsible for the output from 5 o'clock through to midnight, and it's I've been working at Sky for nearly 6 years now, and it was probably the most probably the most challenging day I've had there in terms of how quickly that story moved, because I think even by Rangers standards, the number of statements that came out on Friday was very, very high. We had one in the early hours of the morning from Slavia, a second one where they doubled down on what they were saying later on. There was a Rangers statement. Glen Kamara put his own statement out about 10 o'clock, just before 10. UEFA said they were investigating, but in turn issued a very short statement as well. PFA Scotland had their say. And it was a story which was constantly moving. And I think Sky Sports News, racism and allegations of racism at the moment, we are seeing them more and more and more in football specifically, but in sport. And Sky Sports News, to their credit, and I'm not just saying this because I work with them, but are really trying to lead the way in combating it, and particularly with regards to social media companies and saying to them, look, what are you going to do about this? So Sky handled that story, I think, well, and gave it due prominence at the top of the hour. I think we had about 7 minutes at the top of every hour talking about it, and like 7 minutes on one story is quite a lot of time. And within all of that was a very, very strong, powerful interview with Connor Goldson. He had spoken to the media generally earlier in the day, and then Sky obviously had a one-to-one with him as well. For me, I mean, it was full of buzzwords in terms of things that really stood out, good sound bites. He despises Slavia Prague, was strong, and one of the producers that I was working with was saying, I really like that. And I was saying to him, well, yeah, but I think the admission that the team waited in the tunnel for 45 minutes for Slavia to come in, basically for a square go, for want of a better way of putting
absolutely.
it. That's what he wanted. Now, you know, to admit that, you know, at first glance, you hear him saying that, and you think that's really remarkable. The other one as well, just to touch on it, was him, and he'd said this in the news conference to the general media, that after that instant he wanted to hurt someone, and for the final few minutes of the game, that was how he felt, and he's never felt like that before. Me, I felt that was a really big admission as well, because I don't think that's something that he'll feel particularly proud of. But the admission that the team waited for 45 minutes, and we saw it again, I think yesterday or maybe Saturday. Slavia's head coach had spoken out again about it, and has given for the first time, a version of events that sounds sort of similar to what Rangers are saying, where I think he'd said that after 50 minutes after the final whistle, there was a meeting with Steven Gerrard requested, and with UEFA observer, I think it was, although he then proceeds to say Glen Kamara punched the man in the face, and that was it, which Glen Kamara, with all due respect to him, I don't think could fight his way a wet paper bag. So I would be surprised if Glen Kamara has assaulted someone in the tunnel afterwards. But the fact that Goldson spoke the way he did about that, I mean, at first glance, it seems as though, you know, it's maybe not a great thing to admit, but if the Rangers first team are hanging about in the tunnel for 45 minutes after the final whistle, the UEFA match observer knows that that's happening, because the area around the tunnel and within the bowels of the stadium is not really that big. So UEFA's observer will be aware of it. The match officials will be aware of it. So actually, Goldson admitting that, it doesn't really get Rangers in any trouble as such, because people already know that has happened. The people that matter know that has happened. And I think it was a good one to get out in the public domain, to be honest, because what is alleged to have happened, and I don't want to go all Michael Stewart on people here. There's been a really strong reaction to the way Michael Stewart portrayed or vocalised it. You have to say alleged, because legally you have to say it's alleged, because it is alleged. And in all honesty, proving this situation is going to be a very, very difficult thing to do, because Kudela has come up, he's covered his mouth like this, nobody's seen it. You might have that the referees are mic'd up, so it might be that that's been picked up by one of the by the referee's mic. But, you know, it's probably unlikely. So it may well be that this is never proven. What I think needs to be acknowledged is the reactions of people. I think we all know deep down what has happened.
Yep.
You can allege it. You can say allegedly, because you have to say allegedly. But I believe Glen Kamara, and I think a lot of us believe Glen Kamara. Kamara, I don't know him. I've never met him. But he, from what people have said. James Tavernier was saying it as well in his interview with Sky over the weekend, and Connor said the same thing. Connor said, like, I look upon Glen Kamara as my little brother. He's a quiet guy, goes about his business very well in the park, quiet but efficient, I think is probably a fair way to describe Glen Kamara. For him to react the way he did, and it was so blatant as well, Kudela sidestepping a guy that's lying on the ground injured, stepping out the way, targeting him. I mean, we see instances every day of alleged racism, but we don't actually see the incident. We hear that something has happened, or we see a faceless account on social media saying something racist to someone. But it's very rare that you actually see something so calculated and so cold the way Kudela went about his business. And he went up and he knew what he was doing. He covered his mouth so that you can't lip read, and said what he said. And Glen Kamara's reaction, and Bongani Zungu, who's standing right there as well, he reacts, and then Goldson comes over, and Goldson, I don't think, I can't quite tell what Goldson has said, but I don't think he's come over and said what's happened. He knows what's happened. He's literally said, what number was it? And then he's gone. And he got a lot of praise on social media afterwards for that. That's what you want from a captain, and absolutely I endorse that. What I think is also interesting is the two, in the vicinity of the incident and what happened, there were two black Slavia Prague players standing there. Now, you had a number of Slavia players obviously got involved in the aftermath, but you had Olenka, the goal scorer, and I think it was Sima was the other one, standing within 5 yards, say, of the incident that happened. And everybody knows the word racist. It doesn't matter what language you speak, you know what the word racist is. And straight away, Glen Kamara shouting racist and pointing at him. And you look at, if you watch it back, and you look at Olenka and you look at Sima, both of them are just, they almost look devastated that this has happened from one of their teammates, or allegedly happened from one of their teammates, that one of their teammates, one of their guys who they work with day after day, might have said that and might have gone over and done that to a black player. I was appalled by the whole incident, and I think that the various parties at Rangers spoke exceedingly well on it. Stephen Gerrard really showed his class, dealt with it in such a good way. The clip of him going down the touchline with Glen Kamara and giving him a cuddle, and that squeeze of the hand on the shoulder is it's a mark of the man that Stephen Gerrard is. Goldson spoke superbly. I thought Glen Kamara's statement was, bar a couple of typos in it, was very, very strong and very good statement, and said what it needed to say. And now it's down to the authorities. Now it's down to UEFA. Do they react to this? Do they say that racism is okay by saying we're not going to do anything about that? I mean, as I say, it's a difficult one to prove because he's covered his mouth, and unless there's a mic picked up what has been said, it's going to be hard to prove, even if we all feel that we know, and even if we all believe Glen Kamara, it's going to be a really, really tough one to prove. But that, and also it's obviously soured by what has happened after the game with what's alleged to have happened in the tunnel. As I say, I don't think for 1 minute Glen Kamara stood there and beaten the guy up. When the guy, Kudela, when he left Ibrox and when he left his hotel the next morning, the Crown Plaza next to the River Clyde, didn't look like a guy that had just taken a pasting. No. So I struggle with that as well. And Slavia have stood by their man. They've doubled down on it. They've made him out to be the victim. Glen Kamara is a 25-year-old man, and his name is getting dragged through the mud for an incident where it looks as though he has been racially abused. And that is absolutely appalling. So UEFA now have to take strong action. They have to say, in no uncertain terms, racism will not be tolerated. They might not be able to go the whole hog and punish Kudela and or Slavia Prague. They might not be able to do it. They certainly shouldn't punish Rangers and Glen Kamara, because his name has been dragged through the mud needlessly. He is the victim in this situation, and let's not get away from that, and let's not have UEFA saying, oh, no, he did wrong. It'd be a very UEFA thing to do, to be honest, to find Kamara and or Rangers guilty of something, or both clubs. There'll be some kind of charge for Rangers within it, I expect. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope that they show. And to be fair, the incident with the PSG Istanbul game recently, where one of the match officials was ruled to have used a racist term towards one of the coaching staff from Istanbul, and they've been banned for, 4 months, I think it is, the match officials. That offers a little bit of hope. But they then have to build on that. And if there is another incident like this, they have to treat it seriously and they have to react in the right way. And they have to be shown to be a body that is not going to tolerate it. I mean, UEFA on their website at the moment have an hour-long documentary called Outraged, I think it is, where they are, you know, they're running a whole thing about discrimination in football. You can't have that on one hand, and then on the other hand, you tolerate it. You just cannot do it.
Tommy, should the players have walked off?
So it's an interesting question. It's probably worthwhile, first of all, saying there's two wider things there. That one, nobody on the podcast should walk past the irony of 4 white guys discussing racism. Certainly not lost on me as well. Yep. And the second one being, if it takes somebody being allegedly, you know, racistly abused, and you only take notice of it primarily because it's in your club's colours, then you're missing something in the bigger picture. If you believe that that's the only time to take action, and you don't believe the inherent truth, which is judging somebody on the level of pigment that happens to be in their DNA at birth or subsequently, is the wrong way to look at someone, then you're missing something. Simple as that. So I'm not a massive fan when people speak to, oh, it's terrible to see this in football. It's terrible to see it in any walk of life, full stop. And people should be very aware of that. Or it shouldn't happen to one of our players. It shouldn't happen to any player. And we have to make sure that when we hold the camera up to other people, that camera's got a mirrored edge to it and we look ourselves in the face as well. And I'm not saying that there's a massive racism issue in Scottish football or Rangers or the Rangers support or anything like that. I'm just saying it's one of those bigger issues in life that you absolutely can't say things like, our club are doing a really good thing, and then not live and breathe that yourself. Okay? So those are probably the two macro points. As you get underneath that, I know Steven Gerrard had tried to call over Glen Kamara, wanted to talk to him for that very reason. Do you want to walk off the pitch? What do you want to do here? I will absolutely, unequivocally back you, and so will the club. And I think we've seen that that's a genuine, you know, statement that would have been backed up from everything the club have done, and being behind Glen Kamara as well. And I think the difference from some other points, Andrew was maybe touching on this to an extent as well, is I'm not massively in life impressed by people's stylistic approaches, right? You can be great in front of a camera, or you can be great speaking or whatever. What I look for is the intent and the genuineness. I think most people can get really behind Steven Gerrard, for example, on this particular issue, because it was completely genuine. You can tell he genuinely feels for Glen Kamara, and by extension, any other player of a BAME background as well. That's why he was on the touchline giving Glen Kamara a cuddle. That's why he stands next to his player. It's absolutely inbuilt into him. And so, back to your main question, which is, that's for the players to decide. I suppose the sub question is, should Steven Gerrard have taken it completely out of their hands and got the players to walk off?
Yeah.
Now, that's two questions. That's a in the ether question. Personally, I think if the circumstances were there, they absolutely should have. I would have loved to have seen Rangers walk off that pitch and say, yes, we understand it's an alleged offence, right? And I say that purely in the italics that Andrew has mentioned as well. Okay, we all have a very specific personal view of what went on and what was whispered into Glen Kamara's ear. We've all, by and large, played football or other sports, and we've seen things in walks of life. You don't march over to another player. You don't cover your mouth. You don't whisper in somebody's ear. You don't get a reaction like that for no reason. And you certainly don't get it from the type of player that Glen Kamara seems to be. He's not a fiery hothead, right? It's not made up an allegation of racism, in my personal opinion. So you've got all that sitting there. I would have loved to have seen, and remember Slavia Prague, not to jump streams there, Slavia Prague had form with this as well. I remember, I think 2019 Romelu Lukaku, spoke to their fans chanting that, and we saw some of their elements of their fans. And by and large, I'm not tarring all Slavia fans with the racist brush either. But you see large sections of them on social media. Social media not always been a great barometer, because it's a tendency to self-inflate, because you see a picture and it spreads, right? But they've got that. You've seen their players calling out, I think some of the players that Andrew references, guys like Sima, saying, stop copying that picture of the banner. saying, please stop.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Lukaku called out their fans as well. I can't recall what UEFA did or didn't do very much in the didn't do bucket, I suspect, because they don't follow up with their actions. But again, because you did ask me a question, I would have loved to have seen them walk off. And I'd love to have seen Rangers take that stand and be at the forefront of what is a scourge on society. Forget the fact that it happens to apply to guys or women that wear football boots. It's a scourge on society. If Rangers could have any impact of that from a positive sense, then that is a legacy that I would love my club to be associated with. It didn't happen. What we have done, however, is made it very clear that we stand in a particular element of this debate, and we have managed to draw people together. You see clubs like Dundee United. You see other members of the commentary backgrounds, people like Will Ferdinand and stuff like that, jumping in as well. And I'm not picking up on Michael Stewart as well. I think his point was actually relatively sound to an extent in terms of he was talking about processes. His wording was extremely clunky and badly phrased, right? That's what I'll probably pin that on him.
It's unlike him, isn't it?
Well, exactly, mouth mechanics, so to speak. But the point holds that there are processes there, and you can't just go about saying the reaction is therefore fact. Now, I'm quite clear and sound in my articulation. I absolutely believe Glen Kamara, 100%. Right? But in the world we live in, which is a world governed by laws, getting evidence is a different thing. And so that's why things like allegedly do exist. Andrew's touched on that as well. These are checks and balances that we might not like the sound of when we are looking for a society that wants quick action and people being quickly hung and drawn and all that type of thing. But you do not beat the scourge of racism by that type of thing. What you need to do is be able to evidence and then stand by that decision making and take sanctioned action. The problem here is, unless it's captured on a mic somewhere, you are going to have he said, he says. The unfortunate nature is, well, the only good thing from that is I think this particular player has been shown up for what he is. I think focus has been put on it. We've been able to draw together some other disparate clubs, and we've been at the forefront of shining a light of exactly what we think racism means and its lack of a place in any society or in Rangers Football Club. Sometimes that's the only win you could get. I very much doubt we will see any particular strong action from UEFA or FIFA in this matter. I know FIFA don't naturally have a place there, but from UEFA, don't look for any we are kicking teams out of the competition. We absolutely believe it, by and large as well, because they don't have the evidence to be able to do that unless something does come out. All we can look to is, did our club and our players handle themselves particularly well, and do we understand as a support this is not a moment in time. You want to be against racism, you're against racism from 9 in the morning all the way through the clock. You don't get to just because it was one of ours. Okay, that's the predicated message everybody needs to take away. Now, I sound pretty passionate about that because I absolutely am. Nobody should be judged by the colour of their skin. Delighted to see Rangers and their staff take a stand against that. We all should, every single day.
Andrew, Tommy, great stuff. Thanks, really appreciate that input. Robbie, we'll bring it back now to the game that we had at the weekend. Of course, we travelled to Celtic Park for the third of the 4 league instalments, and we kind of built this up over a period of time, as you'd perhaps expect. And again, similar to the game last Thursday, I didn't think we started particularly well. We were okay, but I again a little bit stuffy, maybe leggy in parts as well. And of course, Celtic took the lead with a goal again coming from in that right hand side. And I don't want to sort of focus on the negativity of having the centre half at right back, but Balogun as well was definitely someone who they were aiming for from Sunday, weren't they?
Yeah, and you touched on Balogun there. The reason why I wouldn't pin too much blame on him is because I don't actually think it was as much an individual issue. I think that, as I said earlier, it's a wee bit of a common trend for goals we've conceded this year. And the positive from our side is we've obviously been doing something very well, because it's took until end of March for teams to sort of properly solidify that as being a potential weakness, if you want to call it that. But I'd say the first sort of 5-10 minutes, I thought we looked okay. We were like handling the ball better than they were, I thought. But I don't think there was any doubt that they'd seen that as a sort of weak point in our team. And again, I'm not just saying that because it was Leon Balogun, because I think they would have played the exact same way if it was David Paterson. So I don't think he would have foreseen that Balogun was going to be playing right back. But I don't think there's any doubt that that's where they were trying to hurt us. And to be fair, I thought they'd done it successfully a good few times in the first half. Because for the actual goal, big fan of Connor Goldson. For me, he's been a player of the year this year, well, so far anyway. But I would actually probably put a wee bit more blame on him as opposed to Balogun. I think when that happened, I thought the positioning of the two of them was okay before the through ball came through. But once it goes to where it is, I think it was Edouard, wasn't it? Edouard's already got a yard on Balogun because Balogun's facing the ball. By the time it goes, he needs to turn then sprint, whereas Edouard's running on a diagonal. As soon as he does that, for me, Goldson's got to follow him, and then Balogun vacates the space at Goldson's left. So I actually don't think it was Balogun's fault as much as people maybe have a different opinion. And then likewise, big fan of Hollander, but for me, I don't think it's probably selling glory for the cross ball either. So, which again, it's not been like us, apart from the fact that goals we continue to keep for cross balls. Defensively, we've been excellent this year, but I definitely think that they kind of spotted a potential weakness in our armoury and exploited it relatively well, particularly in the first half, down their left-hand side, down our right-hand side. But having said all of that, we were coming into the game having played 3 days earlier with 30 minutes with 10 men, and half of that was actually 9 men. You could almost argue there felt a wee bit an emotional hangover as well. I don't think it had the same sort of intensity going into the game.
Yeah.
And that was already coupled with the fact there was no fans, but we were saying off air, first 20 minutes I was saying there's hardly an attack on this game, it's an old firm. And I think, I don't know if what happened on Thursday kind of took the edge off it a wee bit as well. But even detracting from any of that, with a game on Thursday, we've already got league wrapped up. I think people forget that because we are so far ahead of Celtic, people obviously want us to beat them as many times as we can. Listen, it could be the best Rangers side ever against the worst Celtic side ever. See, going to Parkhead and getting a draw, 99 times out of 100, that's a positive result. So the fact that we can play 5, 6 out of 10, still come away with a draw, and not exactly, I wouldn't say McGregor had an unbelievable game. He had to make a few saves, but it was nothing untoward. No. I would still say that considering all the events of the last couple of weeks, where we're at in the season, being wrapped up, a couple of injuries to key players, the fact we can still play average, I think would be complimentary. Still play average and come away unscathed and kept our undefeated record intact. I don't think it's such a bad thing.
Tommy, there's something written in the stars, is there not, when Alfredo Morelos can score his first goal against Celtic and it's his 55th league goal in such a monumental season?
Sometimes the football scriptwriters get spot on. Yeah, I mean, you knew it was going to come. And just strangely enough, actually, just to start that, I agree with Robbie. I thought you're always taught, if you're on a football pitch, be affecting the game. I think it's a great through ball, actually, and it's a fantastic cross by Odsonne Edouard. Have to call out good play when you see it. Yeah. But Connor Goldson is doing nothing. It's not affecting play in any way, shape or form. He's trying to, going back to a very earlier point, he's trying to second guess Leon Balogun getting done by Odsonne Edouard. And that's why he goes closer. By going closer, he leaves that small gap, and then Helander gets caught out by being in 2 minds or 1 1/4 minds. In terms of, does he go for the ball or does he just try and hold Elyounoussi off? And Elyounoussi is actually quite a powerful guy and manages to get in. So I do agree with Robbie, but not walking past the quality of the cross, which I thought was really good. I thought Elyounoussi and Edouard were very, very good in the front game, actually. No. But yeah, I mean, I thought as well the intensity just wasn't there from anybody. And I thought actually not to keep going back to Thursday, but I thought the build-up intensity wasn't there.
Yeah.
Never felt like going into an Old Firm game. For me, any way, shape or form. But get back to Alfredo Morelos, because as I often do, I've wondered the way I've come back. There we are. I do try and get back to them.
Just enjoy yourself, mate. That's what it is.
I always do.
You're not allowed to speak just. That's what the problem is. You can only talk from 8:30 to 9:30.
I was not good at football because I always wanted a free role. I'm just going to express myself on the podcast. That's
you're one of these guys, we don't know his best position, they just roamed a bit.
Yeah, and it never affects the game. It's as simple as that. Never does anything telling. But yeah, listen, Alfredo Morelos, and it was, speaking earlier when we were off camera, I was talking about something I put on social media. The kind of other teams, Celtic Da, to use that colloquial phrase, the Celtic Da, patter had been scolded out. It's been taking a beating, and one of those key things was we have Morelos. He can't be worth any more than Edward and all that because he's never scored against this Celtic. No, that trophy's gone. That's been melted down and put somewhere else. And 55 league goals in the 55 title scenario at Parkhead as well. The only thing that was missing was it being a winner, or it being the one that gets the league trophy, which would have been even more perfect. But monkey's off his back now in terms of everybody was harping on about that, that not being the case. He hadn't scored. Now the narrative shifts to some of the lazier pundits, which is, but he's only got one goal in X amount of games. Very good. That's a real level of insight that you've put onto that there. But ultimately, Alfredo Morelos was never going to be judged by that outside of very, very small pools of people's thinking, right? And by that, I mean people with shallow thought processes. That's why it's such a small pool. It doesn't really matter. He's all about winning games and winning trophies. He just happens to have bagged a goal against them. Probably more interested in that league title winners medal that he's going to get at the end of the season and being able to polish that. God knows how many balloons his wife is going to attach to him. Has to be said, right? We're going to have to come with a lead weight as well just to keep it in the house. But it was great to see, and it was, strangely enough as well. It might have been different if there were fans in the stadium, right? But his celebration was actually relatively muted. Scored another goal against another team. Doesn't really matter to me. What was funny was the response of the Celtic captain, who quite clearly didn't know who had scored at the back post, but decided to admit that from his interview.
The thing with Morelos is that Celtic fans, I get this is just the way that it works. He's not scored against us. I mean, Morelos was the top scorer on the Europa League group stage last season. He had 30 goals by Christmas, and then obviously fell away quite dramatically second half of the season. I think when you look at the Rangers Player of the Year, so I think probably people would agree, if you were to pick a top four, say, for contenders for Player of the Year, you would probably certainly have Alan McGregor, been terrific. Robbie, you mentioned Goldson earlier on. I would put him in there. Stephen Davis and probably James Tavernier. That's probably your four. Now, it says a lot about the season that the Rangers have had when you consider some of the guys who maybe have a half chance of being in that four. I mean, you look at Hadji has kind of made a contribution here and there. He's done pretty well. Ryan Jack, admittedly injury problems, but has impacted in games, as Tommy's saying, really well when he has been fit. You have Borna Barisic, who's been terrific, and I think Morelos, out of the also rans, I think Morelos is the one who is probably pushing to be in that top four to break into. I don't know who he replaces, but Tav, for instance, we've not seen an awful lot of him since the turn of the year. Now, what we have seen since the turn of the year is that Alfredo Morelos has probably been the best player in Scotland for the best part of 3 months now. Yeah. If you go right back to the last Old Firm game, which in itself was not a great game, and what you were talking about there, Robbie, about Sunday yesterday not being particularly good. I mean, the Old Firm game needs the supporters there, and it needs that edge, and it doesn't have it. And we've seen it in all three games this season. But Morelos in that game draws the foul from near Beaton to get him sent off. And since then, he's gone up to Pittodrie, won a penalty, which Tavernier missed. Morelos has then scored twice. Morelos should have been sent off at Easter Road, wasn't. Stayed in the park though, scores the winner there. He scores the winner at Livingston 3 minutes from the end. He's involved in 8 of the 9 goals against Antwerp and only isn't involved in the 9th goal because he's been subbed. He scores against St Mirren on the day that the league is effectively won. And then he goes in and gets the goal at the weekend there, which keeps the unbeaten run alive. And I know we're going to talk about that shortly as well. But he has made several big contributions to the team in the last nearly 3 months now. So I think there is an argument. Morelos hasn't scored 30 goals this season, but he's a completely different player. I watched back the second half earlier on, and there's one sequence of play where it's Morelos that's starting off the move, but he's about 30 yards from the Rangers' goal, and he plays it outright. Couple of nice passes along the touchline, and then there he is picking it up again in the halfway line and shifting the ball forward. And we've obviously seen that from Morelos a lot, where he drops deep, he drops out to the left, to the right. He works tirelessly. He might not have scored all the goals this season the way he did last year. But he hasn't needed to, because his teammates have obviously weighed in as well. And you have, I mean, it's like 20 different scorers or something in the league, I think it is, for Rangers, or close to 20 different scorers. Rangers, the complaint before about Morelos was that Rangers were relying on him too much. Now, they're not relying on him too much, and that seems to be a complaint. That's not a complaint. Morelos might not have been scoring lots of goals, but he's been doing so much other stuff. His link-up plays, hold-up plays, terrific. Really, really good. And I think there's an argument. I don't think he's player of the year. I don't. But I certainly think
I'm glad to hear that.
I certainly think he's higher up the standings than people would give him credit for. He looks like a totally different player at the moment. He plays with confidence, he plays with assurance. Dare I say it, he never looked at any point like he might get sent off yesterday, which, let's be honest, in Old Firm games is kind of what you get with Alfredo.
Nobody's been more affected by the lack of fans than Alfredo Morelos.
But he was really, really good in spells yesterday, and his goalie almost puts it past the post. It goes in off the post, I think, instead. It was a brave header, so I'm not taking away from him. He's done very well to score the goal, and great for him to get. I've got to say, there's a bit of a shift of mentality from Morelos. I think we've seen it in previous Old Firm games where he's been trying too hard, and he's been trying and getting really frustrated, whereas yesterday he looked a lot more assured. He looked a lot more like he knew he was going to get his goal. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe he didn't feel quite as strongly as that. But the way he puts himself about in the park, and I thought some of the touches from him in a fairly average Rangers performance, which at times, to be honest, I think had its moments. I did feel they moved the ball about pretty well and quite effectively, and a lot of good one-touch stuff. But central to that, in the good moments, there was Alfredo Morelos, and I think he was terrific yesterday in taking the goal, and also the way he brought his teammates into the play.
I thought Thursday was...
Sorry,
I thought Thursday was really good as well. And I think when it comes to discussing like player of the year, stuff like that, I know you've counted about a player of the year, which I'm glad to hear, because he's a wee bit away for that for me yet. But I think when the discussions arise, recency bias is real. I think, but if I talk about for 2021, he's been our best player in 2021. I think he's been excellent. And even in games where, as you say, that he's probably not been spoken about as much Thursday night, for example, I thought he was very good on Thursday. In a team where we probably weren't great, because previously I've been critical of him for his link-up play. I always thought before people would credit him on his link-up play because he was good at being a lone striker. But for me, what he done as a lone striker and being a good link-up player were two different things. I thought he was brilliant at getting the ball when there was no one around him and being able to make chances for himself almost. However, I did think he struggled a wee bit with the new sort of role we were trying to adapt him into, by this like sort of dropping deep to allow for our runners and holding it in tighter areas and stuff. However, since the turn of the year, his goals have went up and his all-round play, I think, has went to another level. And the way he's been playing in Europe and domestically would 100% warrant interest from down south or European leagues or whatever. 100% where he's been playing recently. I thought even in an average team with Thursday and Sunday, I thought he stood out for us.
Just on that, I think just to put a little bit of a capstone on it as well. So he's not my player of the year either. I think that definitely needs to probably come from somebody in that back five, including Alan McGregor in that as well. And when Andrew was starting there, the one that was in my mind just outside the top four, so to speak, was definitely Borna Barisic. Maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves at the back because his defensive game has gotten significantly better. His positioning has gotten better as well. He's still delivering, I think, one of the best deliveries in Europe, particularly from a running ball, not just a stationary one. His ability to do it on the run is phenomenal, consistently phenomenal. So he's slightly overlooked there. But just going back to Morelos and the development, you've seen both mentality in terms of never looking like getting sent off and channeling it in the right ways. We spoke about Leo and the interest there, and to Robbie's wider point as well. If Alfredo Morelos is going to get a move to in italics, bigger club, by that I mean richer club in a richer league, it's going to be not so much on the goals, I think, right? Because I still don't think Alfredo Morelos is a top-tier finisher, right? I think he's hit and miss sometimes round about that, right? And dare I say it, sometimes he looks like he panics a wee bit and just slashes at it, right? But he's ability to have taken on board the messages from the management team at Rangers and develop the other link-up play side of his game, and his ability to pull defenders out of positions and make them second-guess themselves and disrupt the back four, back five, and drop deep and link that up is significantly improved. And if you're looking for a striker who can get you a fair amount of goals, has been shown that he can do it in Europe, and more importantly, start to make defenders really question their positioning and pull them apart, and loves the physical side, that's why you get looked at by, I think, bigger clubs than Lille. And it's very much on that side of the ledger as opposed to just the pure goal scoring.
Tommy, who's your player of the year so far?
Alfredo Morelos. I talked myself into it there, obviously. For me, I think it probably does for the consistency. And I'm thinking maybe all through the season I can point to maybe 3 games by and large where he's been pretty ropey. I really can't see by Connor Goldson. I think the ability to be consistently on the pitch has a physical element to it, so tick. Has a mental element to it, tick. Being the de facto leader when your captain's not there has an ability to it. I think one of the things that we've all enjoyed, by all I mean everybody out within the podcast as well, no matter whose team they support, is with the lack of fans, you get to hear the players, get to hear the management team, get to hear just how much Connor Goldson talks the team through a game, particularly the defensive unit. Doing that in itself is a job, and keeping that calmness, and then putting in just really good performances. And then on top of that, being a defender and popping up with big goals, 2 goals at Parkhead to win the Old Firm game, putting down a really big marker. These are milestone moments, and to use Steven Gerrard's language, because it's infinitely better than mine when it comes to backing out a player of the year. If you want to win things, you're looking for big players and big games delivering big moments. I'm struggling to find a bigger, consistent player all the way through that. Inside a team that has set records for its clean sheet keeping, both at home and conceptually abroad as well. So yeah, that's why he's my stick on. Lots of players challenging. James Tavernier feeling very, very sore sitting on the sidelines of that decision, I imagine. But the consistency is just phenomenal. And there we go. That's my take.
Andrew, same question to you. Player of the year so far?
I turned 39 last week.
No danger.
That's some fertility, Andrew, by the way.
Can they over 38?
I turned 39 last week, and Alan McGregor is 6 weeks older than me. And the idea of me throwing myself about a penalty frightens the life out of me. I don't think I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, Tommy, about Goldson. I think he's been outstanding, and I think there's an awful lot of goodwill towards him at the moment for the way he handled things on Thursday night and Friday. I mean, I think he really showed it. Like you talked about leadership there, and that was prime leadership for me. The way Goldson conducted himself, and he's been terrific. I mean, you think back to that Hamilton game last March, and he was a bit of a shambles that night, and just wasn't quite at it. And you're talking about the kind of number of games that he's played this season where he's not been that great, and it really is very small, like 2 or 3 matches. I mean, we were talking earlier on about conceding goals from individual errors, and I think still actually Rangers haven't conceded a goal in this season in the league because of an individual error. I could be wrong with that, but I mean that statistic was getting bandied about fairly recently. So Goldson's been great. The defence in general has been very good. I mean, Goldson has been particularly good because he's not always had the same guy next to him. It's been Hillander, and sometimes it's been Balogun, and despite that disruption, he has still been very, very consistent. But I don't think you can play down the importance of Alan McGregor because, I mean, there's 5 games left of this season, and we're going to talk about it. I think that the matches work out quite well for Rangers to give themselves the best chance of staying unbeaten this season. But Alan McGregor will be very keen, in amongst all that, Rangers are one behind Celtic at the moment for the record they had in 2012 of 25 clean sheets, and I certainly think there's a very realistic chance of that. Of course, the defence will want it as well, but Alan is a real winner. He's one of the few people in the squad that I do know quite well from my time working at the club previously, when he was there previously. And this perception of Alan McGregor being somebody who dives to the left and dives to the right and then does everything else in the
I think that was a criteria for playing.
Yeah, that was Alan McGregor of many years ago. He's settled down a little bit. Don't let that reputation fool you into thinking that the guy's a bit of a clown, because he is not. He is an absolute winner, and we've seen it in a couple of the interviews with him this season, where he's not been a happy man.
Right.
Just haven't got a result. I mean, he's an absolute winner, and we saw yesterday in the Old Firm game 2 or 3 decent saves from El Yunusi and from Edouard, and his showreel of saves this season is pretty spectacular. The one against Slavia, to be honest, I thought his one against Werder Bremen away back was still better, but there's no doubt that save against Slavia.
Tommy's raging.
I was with you up to that point, Andrew. That's it.
Tommy's going to quote a save that Andy Gordon made. It was better, but
every save that Andy Gordon made.
Yeah, listen, I mean that's a different debate as well. I was at the Bremen game. What was that, 2008? And I think still, even now, 13 years on, I'm struggling to figure out how he did it. I thought it was a phenomenal save.
You still think it was 2-0 to Bremen?
We can get bogged down in that. I mean, the point is that McGregor's been worth a lot of those points for Rangers this season, and we were talking just there about Morelos and the contribution that Morelos has made. I think if you go back through the season and you pick out all the big saves that Alan McGregor has made, Rangers wouldn't be sitting at the moment with the lead that they've got. They'd probably still be top of the league. They wouldn't be champions yet. It would be a much tighter affair than it is. McGregor has been... put it this way, I think McGregor has made more big saves than any of the defenders in front of him have made goal-stopping tackles, if you want to put it that way. And for that, for me, McGregor just edges it.
Robbie, last but by no means least.
No, you'll be last, because I'll be asking you. For me, it's you're probably looking between Goldson, Tavernier, McGregor. I think Davis comes into conversation, and you could even argue, well, maybe not for you, but Kamara's probably fifth for me. Yeah. But it's Goldson for me. I just think that played every game, played every minute is incredible. Came up with big moments, been extremely consistent. So for me, it's him. I think if you were to break the season into quarters, you could maybe say Kent, the first quarter, you thought he's going to win for the year, and then it went on to Tavernier, and you thought he's going to win for the year, and then maybe Goldson the third, and you could say McGregor recently, but over the, if you were to split up into quarters, over the full time, Goldson's probably been the top 3 every time. And I actually think, see if you were to look at, I've been thinking about what's been different with us this year compared to last year. Obviously, defensive record has been big, but in terms of what we do going forward, see that, I think it's gone underappreciated. See that sort of diagonal for Goldson over to Ryan Kent. See the amount of times that we've been struggling in games, well, we were struggling in games last year because everything we done was sort of in front of the other team. So we'd maybe move it side to side well, and we'd try and go through the middle, whatever else. We'd have loads of possession, but we couldn't penetrate. See that outball we've got now, I think that's made a huge difference to our team, because it's just the odd time we pick a goal from it, but if not, teams have naturally dropped deeper. It's encouraging forward players to go beyond more, because that's probably a criticism that we had, that guys like Ryan Kent weren't getting goals because they weren't running beyond more. See him having that sort of weapon in his armoury now, I think that's made a big difference in our season. It's something very simple, but I think it's been a sort of domino effect to other results and other phases of play. So I think just taking everything into account, for me, he's my player of the year so far. Right. Scott, last but not least, who's your player of the year?
So I have to say, for me, it's Stephen Davis. And I think that he has been Mr. Consistency since August last year. I think it's easy to forget amongst everything else that's happened. He's just signed on for another season, of course, but he also beat that Northern Ireland record as well for Pat Jennings. And he went for a spell, I can't remember when it was certainly pre-Christmas last year, where he played a phenomenal amount of games in a really short time, and in each game he was an 8. I mean, he was on 8 out of 10 in every one of these games, and it was going from sort of playing here, then going away to play for his country twice, then coming back, and it was like he couldn't have been having any break at all. And then you're squeezing in Europa League games as well there too. So for me, Stephen Davis at the moment is certainly my player of the year without any question. Thomas, you're stroking your chin there. I don't think you agree.
I do that just to make sure this is still stuck on. No, listen, what I was actually going to say is, and I don't agree, right, Stephen Davis, and I don't agree with Alan McGregor, right? I've already told you what I think. What I would say, though, is I could easily understand, I do completely understand Alan McGregor. I spoke a couple of weeks back about keepers, the difference between a goalkeeper who makes saves and a goalkeeper who breeds confidence throughout the entire team. Andrew's talking very much about a goalkeeper who does the latter, who big saves and big moments and breeds confidence throughout the team and is a winner in the dressing room. You talk about Stephen Davis, who even at the end of his career is dictating games at home and abroad, setting European records for caps. Tavernier was mentioned in there as well. The point I was actually going to make is I could easily be persuaded on any of them, right? Although it definitely is Goldson who's player of the year, right? But I could easily be persuaded on any of them, right? But how good it is to be having that conversation, there is such a lively, healthy one where if we were forced into agreeing Tav or McGregor or Davis, nobody would be truly unhappy. I certainly wouldn't be if it was a vote or whatever, and I lost out that it wasn't Goldson. Because I remember a time not too far back in the past where the takeaway award of being Rangers Player of the Year was so devalued as to mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
That you were talking about players who didn't even deserve to be in the squad or in the jersey, never mind getting Player of the Year. Now we're saying, my God, how do you shorten this list? It's got so many players in it that are doing so many different jobs. That's why you win a title. So, yeah, there we go. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I said Goldson, but you could easily give it to a hell of a lot of players. I don't think anybody would complain that much.
Was there not one year that Haris Vukic won it from half a season?
Yes. Absolutely, and that's a very good example of that devalued point that I was talking.
No offence to Haris Vukic, he was decent when he played for
me. He's done us a job, but I've never seen a more predictable cut-up of my life. He's cutting in his left foot, he's starting to bend into the far corner. That's all he's did. Don't ask me anything else. That's all he's did.
But how pleasurable is it that we cycled out of that, and now we're talking about not just with the blue-tinted specs on. You're looking at these players as individual athletes and what they deliver to a really good squad, a championship-winning squad.
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, it could be the goalkeeper because he's big moments he's turned up. And as Andrew said, there's a real basis that you don't get these clean sheets without your keeper being switched on all the time. And the big difference between a good goalkeeper in a smaller club and a switched-on goalkeeper at the top level with Rangers. You look at across the whole back four, they're all doing a grand job. You look in the midfield, you've got a person like Kamara or and Kamara wouldn't quite be in that group for me, to be honest with you, but Kamara or Davis, you're looking up top. Wow, that's a pleasurable moment for me because we're a really, really solid squad with really talented individuals who have all pulled together.
I don't think there's any doubt that this has been the season where we have indeed put ourselves back in the map. We could, of course, go this season unbeaten. The league have announced the last 5 league games of the season from the 11th of April onwards. We've got 3 home ties. Hibs at home on the 11th. The following week we travel to St Johnstone. Maybank weekend we welcome Celtic to Ibrox for the final firm game of the season. That promises to be a good laugh. Away to Livingston the Wednesday midweek, and then last game of the season, Trophy Day. It's going to be very nice to welcome Aberdeen to Ibrox to watch us do that. I'm sure we'll agree. Andrew, could we go the season unbeaten?
Yeah, I think so. I think Rangers, we touched on it earlier, I think that they looked a little bit leggy against Slavia and against Celtic at the weekend there. I mean, it's been a big couple of weeks, since the title was confirmed. We've seen fans across the country redecorating the towns that they live in and doing a mighty fine job of it. And we've seen fans on the other side getting the ladders out and taking the decorations down again. So, but, there has been a lot of emotion. Those scenes at Ibrox after the St Mirren game, and admittedly social distancing wasn't observed and all the rest of it, but can you blame Rangers fans for reacting the way they did and lapping it up? I mean, the club has been through the ringer. I mean, like, speaking personally, when I joined the club It was towards the end of 2007. My second week at the club, we played Barcelona at the Nou Camp. And then to go from that to the start of the journey and administration, and I was at the club for about 2.5 years after administration before, to be honest, getting a bit fed up with the firefighting. I lost my dad, and a combination of those two things meant I felt I needed a new challenge. But those 2.5 years from administration to when I left the club, I think by the time I left, I took voluntary redundancy, and I think it was the 5th round of redundancies in 2.5 years. It had become a difficult place to work in, and I say that as a Rangers fan. Like, on the face of it, it's great to work for the club. Of course it is. It's a whole lot better to work for the club when it's going well. When it's going badly, it's a tough place to be, because everything that is done is scrutinised, and if it's not done well, you hear about it. And it's great for the club at the moment that things are going well, and the title has been won again. 55 titles. What an achievement that is for the club. I mean, I felt when in 2012, I felt it could be 10 years. A lot of my friends were of the opinion, let's go to the 3rd division, it will be fine. And when I started out in journalism, I was covering 2nd and 3rd division games as it was back then, and of course Rangers should be going through those leagues without any problem, but they're tough leagues, because there's an opportunity to kick Rangers players and to make your mark and to make a name for yourself. You're never going to do it again in your career if you're playing in that league, potentially. So you do it, and some players took their chance. I remember being at Stirling Albion in October 2012 and losing 1-0 to a team whose manager wasn't even there because he was away getting married. Some terrible moments, losing 2-1 at home to Annan Athletic, who a few years earlier had been in the South of Scotland League. It was abysmal. So you go from that to where you are now, and I spoke earlier on about the progress that Rangers have made season on season, and the statistics show that there has been progress, and Gerrard is evolving ever so well as a manager. He's conducting himself in the right way. Still makes some mistakes, but by and large he's improving all the time, and he's built a squad which is improving, and having this 2 players for each position thing has really, really worked for him this season. There are a number of factors that have contributed, but to get to the point now where the title is won, I think the fact that you have the international break just now, I mean, obviously players, there's going to be 15 plus players from Rangers going to various to national teams. So it's not like they've just got 2 weeks off, but there is the opportunity at least to mentally refresh and take yourself away from the Rangers situation, and then come back in, and I don't know how many rounds it would be in the Scottish Cup. It was about 4 games, maybe 4 or 5
I think
games.
4, aye.
Yeah, and then 5 games towards the end of the season. The Scottish Cup, take as a separate thing. Yeah, great chance to go all the way there, and Rangers have had the momentum this season, so why shouldn't they? But we said that about the League Cup as well, and obviously things fell apart there, and that's one of the times that Stephen has probably just got it a little bit wrong. He rotated just a little bit too much at St Mirren and paid the price for it. So the Scottish Cup, given that the league is won, the Scottish Cup is a tournament that you should be putting your strongest team out in, including against Cove Rangers, because even though they're in the 3rd tier and even though they've just had 2 months off, that's a game that you need to take seriously. By all means, give 1 or 2 people opportunities, but that needs to be a strong team, and you need to build momentum again, because when you have the emotion and you have the euphoria of winning a league, and you have the players celebrating for 2 days solid, it's great, and they deserve the moment, but there is still 8, 9, 10 weeks of a season to play at that point. And I think this international break will probably be quite useful with regards to giving them a platform to then come back in, roll the sleeves up again and go. And the fixtures, the way they've panned out, I don't think they could really be any better set up for Rangers to go unbeaten. Going to Livingston on that pitch is tricky, but if you remove that and you have Livingston at home, it means you go to Aberdeen or Hibs instead. And I think the chance to take those teams at Ibrox and to go to St Johnstone, who've had a terrific season under Callum Davidson. What a first season as a manager he's had. He's the one for me who will provide any kind of competition to Gerrard for Manager of the Year. I think Callum Davidson's done exceptionally well at St Johnstone, but to be going there and to be going to Livingston, that's about as kind, I think, as the fixtures could have been to Rangers. And if you go through the whole season unbeaten, you're the 4th team in Scottish history to do it. Celtic have done it twice. This would be Rangers' 2nd time as well. They're not going to make the points record, I don't think, that Celtic had, but that's fine. I think Rangers fans will accept that for the season they've had. It's been an outstanding outstanding campaign, a terrific team to watch, and you know the number of goals that have been scored, but the number of good goals that have been scored as well. It'll be a terrific team to watch. Some great team goals, some great individual efforts. And can they keep it going? Of course they can. They can certainly go unbeaten in the league. And, you know, if you win the Scottish Cup as well and you throw in last 16 of the Europa League, that's a pretty solid campaign and a really, really good one for Gerrard. And he needed it as well. You know, he had to win something this season. It would have been a hell of a dilemma where you can clearly see that Rangers as a team are evolving and improving and getting better again than they were last season. But to have finished without a trophy at the end of this season, when you are still seeing clear progress, you know, that would have been a really horrible situation to have to deal with. Like, what do you do with Steven Gerrard now, where, as it is, his team has delivered really emphatically the title. And as much as that has done something for the club, it does something for Gerrard as well, and it allows him to kick on at the next stage. He is absolutely developing as a manager, and that development is only really backed up by results and by trophies. And he's got one now, and he knows what it takes to win it. So it's very much an opportunity to build in the longer term. In the shorter term, absolutely they can go unbeaten.
Tommy, do you reckon we'll do it between now and the middle of May?
I think we probably will, actually. Although, and I'm hell of a fond of the self-made pun of, you know, we went from progress to progress, right? Which is always a good thing. But I find it terribly hard to get exercised about it in any shape or form. So if somebody was to come to me and say, and I get the point, you know, it's not been done too many times. I think Andrew's mentioned there, Celtic have done it twice, we've done it once. You know, it's a rare event, and I'm not having a go at anybody who thinks it's a really important thing. But if somebody said to me, listen, you would lose every game in the league from here on in, but you win the Scottish Cup. Give me the Scottish Cup, because I like trophies. Yeah, I like trophies because that's what you put on the wall, and I like to see my players and my team win trophies. They don't, as far as I'm aware, I'm happy to be told different, but I don't think they hand out a trophy for going, you know, undefeated in the league season, other than the one we've already bagged, which is their championship trophy. You know, you don't include it in your 55 titles plus one, you know, or two undefeated as it would be. That's not to say that I'm not interested. Of course I'm right, and I look forward to that last day of the season. If we can get to the last day, I might change my position if we get to that last game.
I know you really want to win the season. You've done that wondering thing again.
Exactly.
Tommy knows that the pod's nearly done, and he's trying to make it last one.
Melt down the Scottish Cup and chuck it over the wall if we get to the last game of the season. But we've got really good history there, because, you know, I'm looking forward to Hateley or Gascoigne popping up with a goal if it's Ibrox, Rangers versus Aberdeen. But yeah, I find it terribly. I'm not going to do a Slaven Bilic and say I don't care or anything like that, but I find it terribly hard to get exercised about it unless it happens. Obviously, being a Rangers fan, if I was going to lose it, I would want to lose it against a St Johnstone or a Livingston, nobody else on that list. But yeah, I'll default to Steven Gerrard again. Take it one game at a time, and we'll see where we end up at the end of the season.
Robbie, you're still playing to a standard. If you are a player and you've went this far in the season and you've not won, and you know that you could go another 5 in the league, are you thinking it's something that's right at the front of your mindset every time you go out, or is it just that similar approach to what Tommy's just alluded to, just win the next game?
I think prior to the title being confirmed, probably not. But seeing that now that we've won the league and we're only 5 games away, I don't have any doubt that we'll be setting their eye on it. I agree though that if it doesn't happen, I don't think it takes away the achievement. But, you know, to have been part of that squad who's done that, so I'd be very surprised if they weren't thinking about it. Because I think if you think back to the Arsenal team that done it, they just started drawing games till the end of the season. So it was definitely in their mind. So I definitely think that it'll be in the back of some people's minds, which is a good thing. It means that keep them on their toes, and especially when we're trying to win a Scottish Cup. We spoke last week about the fact that, you know, winning's a very good habit in football. So if this is an added motivation, then that can only be a good thing, I think.
Andrew Dickson, I have to say thanks very much for joining us this week. Really enjoyed having you on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Robbie, we'll do it all again next week. Look after yourself this week. Enjoy the Scotland game when it comes on Thursday. I'm sure I'll be watching it. Tommy, I don't need to say that to you because I know you probably won't.
Not that I have anything against Scotland or anything like that, but as far as I'm aware, Ryan Jack has dropped out.
Yeah, he has. He's pulled out tonight. Absolutely
I don't
right.
think John McLaughlin will start. Therefore, I don't have much
Interest is that much.
Yes, simple as that.
So we should say this has been This Is Ibrox. You can get all of our content across at thisisibrox.co.uk, absolutely all free of charge. We are continuing to roll out our women's pod. We had a really exciting interview last week with Kirsty Howitt of the women's team as they gear up to the restart of their season on the 4th of April with a trip into Edinburgh to play Hearts. And much looking forward to it as well. They are chomping at the bit, getting ready to go. We will do it all again next week. Good luck to Scotland, I think, this weekend. We do it all again when we speak about the whole this game in a couple of weeks. Look after yourself, stay safe, be good. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.